The start of today's focaccia, we're going to just pre-weigh our ingredients. You can notice all the ingredients are there. I'm going to be using a little bit of gluten and improver. Gluten to help the crumb and the improver to help the crust. So I'm just putting in all the dry ingredients together. That's the flour, sugar, bread improver and the gluten powder. If you don't have the gluten powder, if you don't have the gluten and the bread improver, you can just omit it and proceed without it. Now, in order to proceed for this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically make a well in the center like I've done here. So in this well, I'm going to be adding in all the yeast powder. So I'm using activated yeast powder. This is basically, the moment water goes into it, it's good to, you can start immediately. But if you get if you need to pre-activate your yeast powder, especially the fat balls that come, the yeast balls that come, that need to be pre-activated. You need to activate that and then add it here. If you're using fresh yeast, you can use it directly. If you're using this particular powder that I'm using here, this is the active dry yeast powder, you need to use half the quantity of fresh yeast. So if your recipe calls for 10 grams of fresh yeast, you can only use 5 grams of this activated or active dry yeast powder. Add in a little water, so half the water goes in. Just let it relax. If you notice bubbles coming up on top, that denotes that your yeast is alive and it can really start going to work. So if there are no bubbles on the surface, that means your yeast is dead. Mix this up. The next ingredient to go in is the salt. The salt and yeast should not come in direct contact with each other because it has like this corrosive action which prevents the yeast from growing. So it acts like a control measure of sorts. So you don't want to do it in the initial stages. You want there to be a control measure, but you don't want to burn out the yeast initially. Add in as much water as you require. So I'm going to add in how much water I require. If I need a little bit more water, depending on what part of the year it is, if it's summer, it might require a little bit more water. Keep kneading this until it gets to a combine. A lot of times what people do is they tend to also squeeze the juice out of the olives and to use that for extra flavor. If you want to make a focaccia with the help of instead of using water, if you want to use some kind of a beetroot juice or some kind of vegetable juice like spinach puree, you can go ahead and replace the entire water quantity with that as well. That will give you a little more body and will also give you a little bit more taste and better nutrition. So this is just water. This is just a simple product, so I wanted to show you how to do this. So you keep kneading it till it becomes a ball like that. So once it gets to a ball, that will denote that the moisture is about perfect, and you need to start then ensuring that the moisture reaches to all parts of the dough through a kneading process. So I am basically doing the first step of the kneading now, and I'll be taking this ball or this combine to the table, and I'm going to be kneading it on the table as well. So you notice that it's easier to do it with this two-handed technique where you're just rolling it with two hands. That's you're rolling it downward. The motion is downward. You're bringing it down and then you're bringing it back up. So this motion is very critical, and you need to continue this motion when you're doing your dough making for whichever dough it is. So we're going to continue kneading the dough in this manner. Keep going until it gets nice and soft and supple. Do not stop. So we've been kneading this dough for a while now, so it's nice and supple and a little soft. So I'm going to add in all the oil now at this stage. So adding in the oil at this stage will ensure that the dough gets even more softer. I'm going to add a touch of pizza seasoning in this, just for some masala taste, because it's a masala bread. I want to add a little bit of taste to this. So this is a very herby masala kind of a rub which I'm using. So this is ideally your pizza pasta masala. Now that's a very Indian thing. I mean, I'm sure if you're watching this and you're not in India, you might be wondering what this is. So this is a very Indian spice powder, spice rub that we've created, which is herbs and aromatics together. So very interesting. Just keep kneading it like that, and all the flavor starts going into the dough. This is a little bit of a technique. I mean, it looks very mishmashy right now because of all the oil that is there. But if you just keep kneading it downward into the bowl like that, using your claw in this fashion, just shaping your hand like a claw like that, and just start pressing it down into the bowl like this. And we can take it out of the bowl and start doing the two-handed technique. So your hand is full of oil. Don't worry, all that oil will get absorbed here. We're going to just get rid of what is not required on the table so that we have more space to work. And we're going to start kneading this downward. So this is very important. This technique is very important for you to be able to do. It's going to ensure that your product is well kneaded and at the same time it's going to make sure that the product is not very extra stretched. So there's a stretch happening, but it's not overworking the dough. So that extra stretch will be very detrimental if it happens. So we don't want to cause the dough to get overworked or heated up in any other just because of the friction on our of the hand and the table. If you were doing this in the machine bowl, you would use the hook attachment with always on a slow to medium speed. It would never be on a very high speed because you're trying to mimic this hand action here. So it cannot get very fast very soon. So you will be really you pay attention to that. So you notice that this has become nice and soft and supple. So what I'm going to do is take a little bit of it out like that, make a little ball, and I'm going to do an elasticity test, which is known as the window pane test. Take a little bit of out and start pulling between your fingers like this. Notice how I'm doing it very gently, pull it very gently, and you'll just check it. If it tears, that means this dough is not yet elastic and it needs to get kneaded a little bit more. But this is not tearing, so this dough is pretty good to proceed. At this stage, we will add in all the chopped. I'm adding in all the chopped olives inside. So you can add a touch of flour if you feel the olives are very moist. You can add a tablespoon of flour, refined flour at this point. Keep kneading it like you did for the oil. But this is a little bit of a manual process. I understand. Some people might be wondering as why am I kneading it so much? And now you'll be wondering why I was using cold water when I started off. So the cold water is there because this is a long knead, and so if you have regular water, it's going to take a lot of time and going to heat the dough up in the dough making process itself. And this is what is very important to note, that when you plan to knead it by hand, always try to keep it within a certain temperature zone so that the yeast doesn't get activated. Now here, when you're kneading it again, take it down to the table. You can use a little bit of flour to adjust it if it feels sticky. Get rid of the excess. Make sure. So this is like taking a small break when you're doing the kneading. So just remove all the dirt from your hand, scrape it, put it back into the dough, and start kneading it in the same two-handed process like this. So this is really this is simple to do. It makes your life easier, and at the same time, what happens is when you're kneading this, you don't tend to over knead it too much when you're doing it by hand. Now at this stage, since the gluten has got a really good workout, I'm going to give it a rest period so that the dough just gets some time to recuperate. So in an oil bowl like that, I'm going to take this dough and I'm going to make a ball out of it and place it down well oiled, and I'm going to cover it up and keep it in the warm area for about 20 to 25 minutes. So that's going to be you can even take it up to half an hour, but 20 minutes in our temperate temperature like that is really good enough. So just wrap it up with a cling film on top, or you can use a shower cap, or you can use a cling foil like that, or you can use a wet towel or a wet napkin, and that's good to go. So rest period of 20 minutes. What I'm going to do is show you the filling now. The filling I'm doing on top of the masala focaccia is basically your sauteed onions, pizza and pasta spice, and we've got some nice chopped and we've got some chopped herbs and some garlic as well. So what I'm going to do is in this well-oiled container or this pan. So it's very important to have a well-oiled or a greased pan like that with the butter paper at the bottom, so that it's easier for you to take the focaccia out of this once it's baked, and it won't stick to the bottom of the pan. So you basically use that same focaccia and press it down using your fingers now. So this is basically you're just creating pug marks into this dough. So you're just flattening it with the help of your finger. There's no rolling pin, or there's no kind of device involved here. So this takes the shape of the pan. Now if you put it in a square pan, it'll be square. If you put it in a rectangular pan, it'll be rectangular. Put it in a round pan, it'll be round. So it depends on which pan it is. It will take the shape of the pan. Once you've made sure it's nice and flattened, you're going to take this sauteed onions. So these are basically 2 onions which are sauteed. I've cut them into roundels, and I've basically sauteed them in a really generous quantity of oil with some pizza pasta spice and some salt. So I'm just using the same spice again and again. I'm not trying to repeat the spices. I'm trying to repeat the spices because I don't want to have too many flavors in there. I just want to confuse my flavor palette. So that's spread out very nicely, and I'm going to put in the garlic in. So the garlic is basically whole cloves. I'm not really cutting them or chopping them. So I'm putting whole cloves because these whole cloves are really flavorful, and when they bake, they hold their shape as well, so they look really attractive. So you just put in the whole cloves, just basically make sure that it's well placed everywhere. There's no real, you can be very random the way you place these. There's no real technique to it, but make sure that you cover length and breadth of this particular focaccia so it's well covered, and in every bite you'll get some amount of garlic. Sprinkle the rosemary on top, so you have dried rosemary. You're going to sprinkle that all over it. So we've got everything to the T. We've used up everything. Now I'm going to basically just pat it down like that. So just when you're patting it down, this will ensure that the filling is going to stick to the focaccia, and pat it down well. Pat it down, with a little bit of force so that it sticks well. You're going to take all that excess oil out. So you see that's like a lot of oil. People wonder, oh my god, there's so much oil in this. But focaccia is supposed to be oily. It's supposed to be a very rich bread, and it's supposed to be a bread which is not very not very thick. It's supposed to be about an inch to about 2 inches in height. So that will give you a very nice and dense bread. Goes very well with soups and salads, and not generally served with main courses, but of course, you can play around with that as well. So this is going to go in for a rest period now. The rest period is going to be for approximately about 45 minutes, 30 minutes to 45 minutes in a warm area, well covered. Yeah, that's it. Amazing. So this is going to go and rest now. And we're going to take this out later and put it to bake. Can you check that out? So this is risen for 45 minutes, and I'm going to bake it at 180 degrees for 30 minutes now. So this has come out of the oven. It's baked to perfection. It took about 35 minutes in the oven at 180 degrees. So this is well baked, and the tray is real hot. Normally I would not unmold it until it gets to a temperature where I can touch the pan with my bare hands. Although it'll be hot, it'll still be something I can work with. Now this is what I want you to notice. It's golden brown at the bottom, so that denotes it's well baked. Nice 1 inch thickness. So it was really tiny when I put it in. It was about half an inch when it was placed in the pan, and now it's 1 inch. So I'm just going to arrange back all the garlic that was kind of got dislocated when I unmolded the product. So this is again it's really nice, really tempting to look at. Full of there's a lot happening on top of the focaccia right now. There's herbs, there's onions, there's garlic, and there's all sorts of spices on top, and that's the whole trick to this. So when you need to make sure that it's nice and pressed down, so it get the flavor kind of gets in there, and you need to be able to serve this. So although against my better judgment, I'm going to cut it out when it's real hot right now, just to show you what it looks like inside. Normally you would wait for this to cool down completely or to room temperature before you cut it, so whatever carry on cooking has to happen will happen. But you can still see how amazing this looks. You can see the proper height. You can see it's properly pressed down. You can see that you can literally, I can't tell you how divine this smells. It smells amazing. Just check that out. Just check that. Just check the filling. Just check the herb play. Just check all the check the little dotting of olives on top. It's just brilliant. Really simple. The focaccia is not a very difficult bread. Again, as I mentioned to you, served with it's served with your soups and with your starters. So it's a bread that goes along with the lighter course of a meal. Try this. I can't stop myself. I'm going to go for one more. It's really like a burst of flavor in your mouth. A little burst of flavor. It's like you're going to wait. It's full of flavor. It's very difficult for us to denote, exactly when to eat a bread or when to not eat a bread. But whenever you eat it, make sure that you eat it when it's, really soft and easy to chew. And also you got to take a look at the netting here. So make sure that the netting is not too thick and not too dense. This is of course a dense bread, and it's going to be crusty from the outside and soft on the inside, but at the same time, there's going to be a touch of oil there. So that oil is basically there to ensure that the bread remains moist, and it's served with certain courses of meals, so it doesn't really require anything else except the bread. You can also have the bread by itself. Thanks so much, guys. If you want more, please log on to foodybreaks.com. We have a lot of more things happening on it. Thank you so much.